What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about some very alarming news that isn't happening yet, but it most likely, I would say, is going to happen. It happened last time, and things are not looking good. So what we have is it looks like the video game voice actors might be going on strike. They've been given the authorization to vote to strike, and that would happen, I believe, late September is when all that stuff is going to be discussed, whether they can work on a deal or get a deal done by the end of September. I think it's like September 26th, but let's just say end of September to make things all nice. And you might remember, well, Alex, has this happened before? It sure did, and obviously as consumers, it means you're going to be waiting a very, very long time for certain games. So what I want to do is really quickly talk about that 2016-17 voice actor strike. There's actually an entire Wikipedia page on it if you guys want to go, but I remember some parts of it. I remember Life is Strange in particular. That was a really big one. Ashley Birch not being Chloe in Before the Storm. That was a big one that stuck out to me. And so again, this has happened. It was against 11 video game developers and publishers, and it seems like it's going to be almost the exact same list again. So the EAs of the world, Insomniac Games for those Spider-Man, Wolverine fans actually is what that would affect. Take-Two, WB Games, so the Wonder Woman game, etc. This is who it affected last time. It seems like it's going to affect almost the exact same, if not the exact same, this time. Again, that's if they strike, but considering what we already have in Hollywood, I don't think it's impossible. In fact, I think it's kind of likely. Now, if you remember, that strike lasted for almost an entire year. It started in October 2016. It ended around September of 2017. Almost a full year. Many games were delayed because of this. Some games swapped out the voices and other people that were not part of it. Now, that is one thing to kind of throw out there. Technically, well, number one, it would only be these companies. So if you're not on this list, whatever the list will eventually be, right, you might be in the clear. However, I don't see Square Enix, and Square Enix was affected, so the list might be slightly different. I would honestly think a lot of Japanese developers, in fact, all of them, are not affected by it. Now, I don't know how, the representation works of, if you have, say, somebody in, the Actors Guild here, say, for Final Fantasy, or for Kingdom Hearts 4, actually, it is one that kind of pops up in my mind. If you're doing the English dub, would that mean that you can't do it? I feel like that's probably pretty likely. Maybe the Japanese stuff would not be affected by it, but the English would. So it's things, obviously, we're going to have to kind of learn a little bit as we go forward. And let me make one thing clear. I actually am way more in support of a strike like this versus the Hollywood one. Specifically for gaming, we know that voice actors sometimes are taken advantage of. Last time, it was about the length of time that they could record. They're recording sessions, kind of splitting it up, residuals, things like that. And again, I think I am way more on their side. I guess just covering the industry, you see a lot of stories of them being taken advantage of or just not getting really paid much. Or, I don't know, you look at franchises that have sold 30, 40, 50 million units over, say, however length of time. Are those people being compensated the right way? Probably not. So some of the stuff was figured out back then. There was a 3-year contract. I believe it was extended 2 years and then another year. So this was the last time because the deal was just extended longer. I think it's honestly going to happen. A few things to throw in. What does that mean for your favorite game? Well, as described, if you're part of this guild, it's probably the game's going to get delayed. So I know I had somebody ask me about Wolverine, the Wolverine game. I would honestly put that front and center on games. Just go kind of down the line. Think of EA. So think of maybe Dragon Age or Mass Effect. Push it. Delay it. Warner Bros. Any upcoming Warner Bros. Game, push it. That's very scary. I'm not on that side of things. Obviously, it's not good news. While I want the actors to get paid what they're owed and maybe for some things in the back end there, right, to kind of get smoothed over, this would not be fun, literally at all. Now, again, this is kind of my bread and butter in this industry, the Hollywood strikes. I care, but it doesn't really affect my day-to-day, YouTube stuff because I really don't talk about many movies. But for gaming, well, obviously, if we have an entire year of multiple games getting pushed. Now, is that to say that no game can release in that time? No, plenty of games would release. Again, some games would maybe actually just swap out voice actors for people that are not part of the guild. Last time, voice actors actually started attacking each other and saying, hey, we're striking, and you're not part of the guild and you recorded lines, and so you're certain words, not really the greatest publicity there. So hopefully they don't do that again. So I'm sure games would come out. I'm sure many of them would get pushed. I'm sure some, depending on what stage of development that they're in, I assume that they would try to swap people out where they could. Remember, like, everybody's kind of in it to make money. Like, the actors want money, the studios want to continue making money, so it's hard to make games without literally any voices. There are some games you can actually get away with it, but not most, right? So you'd have to kind of get creative, and I'm sure studios would. It wouldn't be a great time. Hopefully it doesn't happen. To be honest, I expect it to happen, and then I just hope that it doesn't last an entire year. That would be very, very much not good. I'd honestly, though, say once the Hollywood stuff ends, which I feel like it'll end hopefully by the end of this year, right? If it ends, I feel like that would put a lot of pressure to kind of end everything. So once the Hollywood strike is over, then you move to this and say, okay, let's kind of get a deal. Maybe the Hollywood strike has to happen first, or that has to end first. So it's definitely something that we'll have to kind of keep our eye on. And again, this doesn't affect anything until the end of September. It also wouldn't affect games that are coming out in September, or say like Spider-Man or Alan Wake for October. Those games are all safe. There could even be games that are coming out. Oh, I would actually say any game that comes out the rest of this year is most likely safe. You don't normally, though. Sometimes you have voice lines like a month or two before the game comes out. So if you're coming out in like January, February, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the English dubs of that, they might still be working on it, right? So that would be a tricky situation. I would wonder what would happen there. But even games that say January on, almost all of them, again, I'm sure some of them don't use actual dialogue. Maybe it's all reading or text, but obviously that's the very few, right? That's the minority. So if your game is coming from a studio that's on the list and it comes out in January or later, I'd expect something to happen to it in not a good way. So I'll be keeping my eye on it. I'll be updating it, whenever it kind of happens. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.